Welcome to the Junior High Humanities Podcast, where our students dive deep into the heart of what it means to be fully human.
Every episode is a student-driven journey featuring their unique insights, reflections, and discoveries from their humanities assignments.
Stay tuned to the Junior High Humanities Podcast for a captivating exploration of humanity, faith, and learning.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to a new show on the CVCS Podcast Network. My name is Joseph Jasper. I'm the Network Director or Executive Producer of the Podcast Network, and I am joined today in the podcast studio by more teachers than I think have ever been in the podcast studio at one time to introduce a new podcast that is called the Junior High Humanities Podcast. I think this is the first time that we've had a show that kind of operates like a catch-all for a lot of different projects and shows, which is really exciting. We're going to introduce this show this morning, and then we'll have student episodes coming after this episode. What I want to get started with in this episode is introducing the show, introducing the teachers that are a part of it, their heart behind these different projects, and what you as an audience can expect to hear as you listen to our student episodes. So let's start by introducing the people that are in the studio with me. Could we just go around the studio and could you introduce yourselves, talk about what you teach, talk about maybe even how you ended up at CVCS or in education if you want to introduce yourselves that way. And then we'll talk about the podcast later. Just introduce yourselves here up front. Let's start.
Sure. So I'm Elise Long. I teach 8th grade English here at CVCS. And man, how I got into Christian education or even teaching in general could be an entire series. But I will share some of that at Chapel. So if you are listening to the other podcast stations, then I would recommend our Chapel, CVCS Chapel podcast, and listen for November, which is where I'll share how I got into teaching education, because it really was a God thing. God chose me. I did not choose teaching, so which is a funny story. But I'm just so blessed to be here at CVCS. We moved back to California from Texas a couple of years ago, and walked into the school and I think we felt the presence of the Holy Spirit here particularly, and knew that it was the right place for me as a teacher, but then also for my children. And so yeah.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah.
I am Kelle Bond. This is my 13th year at CVCS, over 25 years in Christian education. We got here because Sean McDowell called and said, hey, we need a volleyball coach and a Bible teacher. And the Lord, in his providence, just allowed that to come true. I currently teach the Case for the Resurrection along with Worldview to our amazing 8th grade. And then I am the head varsity volleyball coach for indoor and beach.
Wonderful.
Hello, I am Sarah Spencer, and I have been teaching at CVCS for 5 years. It was also an answer to prayer. I think my husband and I were walking down one of the beach trails, and it was a career-changing moment where it was, do I stay in the career that I was in, which was construction, or do I leave it and try something new? And we talked about how my mom had taught for 35 years in Christian education and how amazing that and fruitful that was. And so that's how I ended up being a teacher and getting my credential. And then I teach U.S. history to the 8th grade class. And I'm just excited to talk to them about the foundations of our country and see what they pull out of it. So
yeah, that's awesome. So this is the Junior High Humanities Podcast. We have represented English, Bible, and history all at the junior high level, of course. As I mentioned, this is the first podcast series that is kind of a catch-all for multiple classes, multiple projects, which I think is really exciting. Could someone talk to just even giving a definition of what this podcast is? What is this show about, and why is this existing in this format
Sure. I'll start. So last year I had a number of students who were recording podcast for some of their English projects. I love student choice and podcast. Recording a podcast episode was one of them. And one of the students had at the end of the year had said, "You know what? The world needs to hear this." And I was like, "You know what? You're right." And I guess our hope. Kelly and Sarah are phenomenal teachers, and they're doing like phenomenal things in their classrooms, and the students were just wanting to, I think, use the public, platform of a podcast channel.
The channel feed?
Yeah, a podcast feed, in order to be a light to the world, because our, the theme of humanities is to learn what it means to be human, but then our 8th grade theme is to encounter the beauty of God's truth. And what a wonderful opportunity for our students to really be a living testimony through the projects that they create in Bible and history and English, and to share that publicly. And my hope is that someone, way off in the distance heart would be touched by the truth that the kids encounter through these projects, and that they're willing to share with the world.
Yeah, I love that. Could we talk about some of the projects that will be happening that are going to all be collected in this podcast feed across the different classes?
Yeah, in U.S. history, we talk about different Supreme Court cases, landmark Supreme Court cases, and the hope is to reflect on them in a biblical point of view, and talk about how does government look when we look through the Bible as well. And then another great project is at the end of the year when the students come up with their innovation projects, and they study inventors that have been in the United States for decades and decades, and then they see how did their innovations, how would that look in 50 years? What's the projection of that? And the students get to create what they hope the future will be. And, and so those are one of my favorite projects that we go over.
That's awesome. Yeah.
For Bible, we have a handful of projects. I think one of the favorite ones is our magazine at the end of the year. The kids interact with the topic and look at it from a secular worldview, a gospel-centered view, and then their own worldview. Yeah. And they present their magazines in a very quick TED Talk-esque presentation, but it's amazing to see them research, okay, what does the Lord have to say about this topic? What does our world say about this topic? And then what do you believe? The magazine is a favorite. We do a napkin of truth where they take an argument for God and they go through the napkin and present it like they would be presenting it to a stranger at a coffee shop. And then not only do they present a case for it, but then they also write down a counter argument and then counter argument. And so it's this fun, the classroom's like a coffee shop and the kids come in and pretend that they're having a conversation, and they leave this person with one napkin about an argument for God. What would they want that person to know? Yeah. We have our Wall of Martyrs where the kids pick a martyr, early church martyr, and talk about their lives and why they went to their deaths claiming that Jesus had risen. We have a creative story under Roman persecution, a 3rd century Decius, on whether or not they would pinch the incense and declare him as Lord. It's a lot of, Elise talked about what does it mean to be human, and being human is living in relation with one another. All of life is relational. And so how do we navigate these relationships in a biblical worldview of truth, and do that thoughtfully and do that lovingly?
Yeah, and in true teacher fashion, I basically stole ideas from both of these wonderful ladies, and really wanted to have English be a bridge for both history and Bible. And so, they're amazing teachers. I wish everybody could be a student in one of their classrooms, because you would learn so much. And So one of the first projects they'll do is students right now are recording episodes for poems, narrative poems that they've written, loosely based narrative poems. It's really just about themselves and their lives, and people who've had they have 2 poems that are dedicated to people who have had an impact in who they are as a human being, and then they have a poem about their Christian testimony, and if they are struggling, then it could be a poem about their questions to God. And it was really just a connection to Bible, right? Like wrestling with their faith. Our hope is not that these students would be academically prepared, but that they would have a really strong foundation in Jesus. So when they go off into the world, like they are able to maintain their faith and then also lead others to Christ. And so that's a great one. And we read the Pearl with that, which is a narrative, and tie that to like our big question, which is what pushes people to the point of revolution, and this idea of like even in our own lives, like sometimes we wrestle a war in our mind, and so what does that look like? And we also talk a lot about hypocrisy. I mean, John Steinbeck is big on hypocrisy within the church and what does it mean to like be Christ-like in the world. So that's a great project. And then we read The Hiding Place, and Mrs. Bond and her class, they talk about the Pyramid of Hate. And so the students do research projects, and we really talk about modern day miracles that Corrie ten Boom experiences. And so it's a great link with both Bible and history because they're doing research projects. And so they'll be back in the studio talking about their reflections on Corrie's life and her struggle with trusting God with everything. I mean, to be starving and then to be so trusting that God's going to multiply vitamin drops, or that God's going to meet their needs in a concentration camp takes a daring faith. And then next semester, we start book clubs, which is super fun. Once again, going for student choice. And they'll do World War II book clubs, and they'll reflect on those stories, like because those books are secular, so they aren't based in Christianity. And the kind of idea is, what does it look like to be in survival mode with God and then without God? Because and then what does that look like for us as ourselves if we're in those situations? And then we end up with like dystopian book clubs, and the students will compose their own dystopian short stories based off of their history project.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, so it's going to be cool because they're going to turn this like really cool invention and then turn it evil. So no, they don't have to. They don't. It's just an idea, but envisioning a dystopian society, and then and oftentimes with dystopias, they remove religion, and so it's a big conversation, like why is faith scary?
Oh, it's fantastic. All right, can you tell us why are you choosing to do a podcast in the first place? Obviously, students can do a whole bunch of different kinds of projects. They can create a whole bunch of different kinds of things. I'm curious why you chose a podcast as like a format or as a kind of deliverable. What do you see that's unique about this kind of a platform, and what do you hope students capture because it's a podcast?
I think it's like a real world skill. I think nowadays, like even real estate companies have a podcast, or like, right? Like everybody has a podcast. Who isn't podcasting essentially? And so just kind of the idea of having them to build those skills for high school, for college. And even if podcasting phases out, there's going to be something similar that takes its place, right? And then also to reach a broader audience. I think like when the students know that all of their friends are going to hear it, parents could hear it, faculty could hear it, right? And it gives it more of a gravity for each project. And kind of almost a cool factor, right? Because I think also which teenager doesn't have like AirPods stuck in their ears, right? They're always listening to something. And so I think that podcasting is really fun in that it connects the students to a wider audience than they would just by presenting their projects to their class.
I also think that words really matter, and our students are given a platform to use their words to express their feelings. And kids that may not feel comfortable doing that in a large classroom or among their friends, here in a very controlled, isolated environment where they can prepare, I think we're going to see kids who maybe don't share a lot outwardly, but have a lot to say internally. And this provides an amazing, safe place for them to share their hopes and their dreams and to give feedback in a way that is non-threatening. And I think it's a really creative way for extroverts and introverts to use their gifts.
Yeah, absolutely. I think if we were doing this like Family Feud style and I put out a survey to all the teachers that have ever done podcasts with me, you would have nailed number 1 and 2 for what like the top reasons are. And number 1, Sarah, you mentioned having like a global audience. And the more I've gotten into podcasting with my colleagues here, the more and more I've come to lament how often the teacher is often the only audience for our students' efforts. How many assignments have we ever assigned? Students put hours of work into it, and then it just goes to our eyes and then essentially vanishes from history. And then, Kelle, number 2, you mentioned like bringing out introverts, like certain personalities will shine in this format that would probably not shine in other formats that they would typically get to. So I love that you've mentioned literally both of those things. Those are top 2 for me. Next question as we start to wrap up. You're going to start hearing yourselves student episodes soon. They have started recording those just recently, and I'm going to pass those on to you for the sake of grading and other things. But as you start to listen to student work and the episodes that they have produced, I'm curious what you as teachers hope to hear from your students. What will lace their words that you hope you pick up on as you listen to what they've produced?
I think I'm hoping to see authenticity. I know in our Reflections post-podcast project recently, some of the students had shared that it was the most vulnerable they had ever been when they were analyzing their poems with a group of friends and then recording them. And so I'm hoping to hear just an authentic connection to the projects that they create in our classrooms. I'm also hoping to hear confident communication. I think as a humanities department, we're very discussion-based. And we also, I know Mrs. Spencer has done a lot with like oratory skills and using like the ideologies in Zen presentation that our students would confidently present. They would be engaging speakers. And so, yeah, I'm hoping just to see all of that come out through their podcast.
Yeah, I would say I would look for connections just with the topic that they're discussing and how that connects to them as individuals, and then how that connects to the person of Christ. So the connection point, I think that discernment and relatability is pretty crucial for their growth and their wisdom. That's what I would look for. I would also look for curiosity, that they could address a topic, an issue, something that they love or something they don't love, and be curious about it and be free to discuss that in a thoughtful way for curiosity's sake, not to find the exact answer or to have the exact conclusion, but just to be curious and to connect that again with themselves, with others, and with the person of Christ.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I think creativity, like I'm hoping that our students this year, now that we've had a year of, is it 1 or 2 years that we've been?
We're just started the 2nd year of the podcast studio. Yeah.
So I think like now that they have a year under their belt, like how can we listen to podcasts that already exist?
Mm-hmm.
How can we see what some of the high school students have done? And then how can we make it better?
Yeah.
Right? Like how can we add music? How can we add drama? How can we add the highs and the lows that like you want to hear in a podcast? And so I hope my students don't just come in here and like casually just recite what they've read or reading off the page, but more of like, how can I really make this like something unique and different and something I'm proud of?
Absolutely. That's fantastic. Last question for you all this morning. What is your send off to our audience? The people listening to this podcast right now, potentially around the world, they're going to start now, this episode ends. If they have this on just play and continue, like they're going to start hearing students within a few minutes. What do you hope the audience gets out of hearing student work specifically? It could be very similar to the answers of the last question, but just to our audience, what is your send off to them as they start listening?
I think context is key. So to realize the lens this is being discussed, it's from junior high students who are courageous and bold and coming in to discuss things that are valuable to them, and they're engaging in a vulnerability that they may not do elsewhere. So to understand who's saying it, where it's coming from, their age, their wisdom and discernment in that age, and to be gracious and thoughtful in hearing our kids speak from the heart. I think we all, with this world of social media and of Twitter and of just reaction, can actually take a step back and simply respond in a non-anxious way to understand these are kids who are taking a risk to put themselves out there. And in that, we need to be gracious and thoughtful to their hopes, their dreams. Everyone is in process. Yes. And I just think back to my junior high years, and I love them, said no one ever. No one ever said that. So the fact that they are doing this, it's so exciting as teachers that they would step out of their comfort zone and do hard things. And that's how I'd want people to approach the way they listen to our kids.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I hope our audience takes away a sense of hope. I think that Gen Z or Gen Alpha, whatever you want to call them, there's a lot of negative connotation around the younger generation. And I'm so blessed because every day I get to spend time with that generation, and I see amazing potential. I think anyone out there who is worried about the future should come to CVCS and see our students, because I have a lot of hope that they're going to do amazing things for the world, for the community around them, and then also in the name of Jesus. And so I hope that our audience takes away a sense of hope that the future is bright, and that with grace and compassion toward our students, they could see that these kids have amazing ideas, and their hearts are good, and they have a lot of opinions that are valid and great, and they're going to do great things in the world. So
it's amazing.
I hope they just laugh with us.
Yes.
And feel inspired by us and by the students, and and just like be inspired to be more curious about faith and life and all the good things.
Yeah. That's fantastic. Yeah. I hope our audience one day, years from now, is these same students getting to listen back to what,
great
you know.
Would that
That
be?
would be amazing.
Oh man. I hope that can be inspiring, and they can be proud of what they've done, of course, you know. That's going to wrap up this introductory episode. I want to thank Elise, Kelle, and Sarah for coming in, being willing to record this introductory episode. Not only that, but just for creating this whole project in general. I'm really excited to start hearing and publishing what the students have done, and to get what feels like it's going to be a steady stream of his word's a little funny to use, but content. A steady stream of content coming out of the junior high, though, that is high quality, like you said, authentic, hopeful, but eminently shareable, and something that we're proud to put out there. So thank you for all of your work as teachers. Thank you for doing all of this. And thank you to our audience listening. We hope that you enjoy the student episodes as they start coming out now. And catch other shows on the CVCS Podcast Network. Until next time, everyone. Bye-bye. This episode has been a production of the Capistrano Valley Christian Schools Podcast Network. Capistrano Valley Christian Schools is a Christian JK through 12 school in San Juan Capistrano, California. Be sure to check out, subscribe to, and leave a review of this show and the other shows on our network on your podcast player of choice. Doing so supports the school community in a multitude of ways. For more information about the CVCS Podcast Network or any of our other shows, check out cvcs.org or email podcasts@cvcs.org. On behalf of the whole network, this is Mr. Jasper saying thank you again for listening and stay tuned for more.